Hey everyone, I'm Kendall.
And I'm Paul, and we are Bike Gearheads.
And today we're super excited to share our first impressions of the all-new Santa Cruz Bullit e-mountain bike.
If you'd like to check out the builds, you can check out everything on our launch page here.
And if you want to skip around this video, we have chapter timestamps below. Let's get into it.
Hell yeah.
The new Bullit is still built on a mixed wheel only platform with 170 millimeters of front and rear wheel travel, but there is a suite of new features.
Yeah, and there's one very obvious change when compared to the old Bullit, and that is the suspension platform.
That's right, so we're moving to a 4-bar system, much like the new Vala. This allows for the bike to fit the all-new motor, which is our next highlight.
Yeah, it's the Bosch Performance CX line motor.
It's also the same motor from the Vala, so they're kind of going all in with this, and I can see why. It's a big change from the previous generation, which was that Shimano EP8.
The other thing that's great with this bike is it's compatible with the Bosch 250 watt-hour range extender.
It mounts directly to the bike and just gives you a little bit more range for those super long adventure rides. Another cool perk from the change to the rear linkage is going to be that it allows for longer dropper posts than ever before. Dropper posts are getting longer every year. We just saw a 250 millimeter post come out from RockShox, so they're keeping up with the times.
That also leads us into the next big change, or the next new thing with this Bullit, which is the introduction of the size small, also helping tall riders, but also helping some smaller riders get on the bike, which is another great thing.
That's right. So yeah, the previous generation Bullit just came from sizes medium through double extra large. Now we have the size small. Moving on to the bike's geometry. Santa Cruz did kind of go with the standard slacker, longer, better treatment, but honestly, I'm not mad about it, and we'll talk about why. When we're rattling off numbers here, we're just going to be referring exclusively to the size large bike in the low position. On that note, we have a 477 millimeter reach compared to the previous generation's 475. So about the same there, and is cool because I think it helps riders actually stay on their intended size bike. I mean, the bikes are just getting so long, a lot of people are downsizing. This is a little bit more, true to size, quote unquote, in comparison to a lot of the other brands.
A current Kenevo in an S4 is around 485, so this is a little bit shorter than that. It's not going to be too big if you typically do ride a large, but it's also going to be a good size if you're maybe looking to downsize and looking for like a slightly more playful e-bike.
Yeah, they didn't go over the top with the reach, which is kind of refreshing to see these days. It seems like it never happens. What did get longer is the wheelbase. We're seeing about a centimeter longer wheelbase across the board. We're up to 1280 mil on the wheelbase, so pretty long, but also kind of to be expected with a long travel bike like this, right? Like, length does help the bike track. On a similar note, all the sizes here do have size-specific chainstays, something that we kind of expect from Santa Cruz, but a lot of brands aren't doing it, and I definitely think that's the way to go.
Yeah, definitely helps with that balance throughout the size range. Make sure that the smaller riders are getting the same rider experience as the larger riders.
As for head tube angle, we are down to 63.3 degrees on this bike, so pretty darn slack, like kind of more in downhill bike territory.
Yeah, getting there.
It seems like long travel enduro bikes and long travel e-bikes are kind of trending in that direction. The previous generation was a 64, so it's not like a crazy shift, but yeah, it is slacker. I think when you have the motor to power you, there is not much of a downside to the slackness for, more stability at speed.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously gonna maybe hinder you a little bit on the climbs here or there, be a little more wallowy, but I don't really mind that stuff as much when I'm climbing. You can deal with it. To have that nicer descender, which is exactly what this bike is meant for. It's what it's built for.
I think it's well worth it. I think the change makes sense. And yeah, on that note, I think that wraps up Geo pretty nicely. We can move on to colors and sizes. We mentioned the bike now comes in a size small. This is super exciting. It opens the door for this bike to more people. That being said, we have yet to see an extra small e-bike from Santa Cruz at all up to this point. So I am pretty excited to see if maybe the next new e-bike has that option for some people. Maybe it's the new Heckler SL. I think a lot of people would love to see an extra small bike.
But for now, the Bullit's coming in 5 sizes, ranging from a small to a double XL.
On that note, I rode the size large here, and I thought that was pretty comfortable. I am 6'4" myself, but I typically kind of size down. The large felt really good. I'm sure I'd be perfectly comfortable on an extra large. I probably would not go for the double extra large. This already felt pretty close to what I need, so definitely a bike that you could consider sizing down on if that's your jam.
It does have a flip chip on it, which changes the high-low setting on the bike. Does also affect something like the reach. While it's a little bit, it's only about 3 millimeters. it's still enough to give riders that adjustability. And so it's nice to have a little bit of flexibility there and allow riders to fine tune their ride.
Yeah, the flip chip is nice for cockpit stuff, but it changes the the bottom bracket as well. You can put it in the low if you want to stick to the steeps and ride more technical terrain. But then if say you take a trip to the desert or something and the trails are a little bit flatter, with not as much vertical change, that high position is going to be a good option and can help keep your pedals off the rocks as well. Moving on to colors, we have the gloss black behind us, which I think looks really nice. It also comes in a matte teal sparkle, which I have not yet seen in person, but I think the photos look sweet.
And obviously you can never really go wrong with a black bike. So moving on to builds, we have 4 different configurations that the Bullit is offered in, ranging from the SRAM transmission 70 group set all the way up to the SRAM XO Axis Reserve group set.
So all builds are currently SRAM drivetrains at this point in time. And something interesting that Santa Cruz is doing is they're speccing all builds with 155 millimeter cranks, which I thought is definitely the right move for an e-bike. Why wouldn't you?
Kind of taking a note from the downhill world, running those shorter cranks is definitely going to help you with bike control, and with an e-bike, you don't really need the extra leverage.
Another cool thing about the XO Axis Reserve build in particular on this bike is it's coming with that brand new Fox Float Factory X2 shock that was just freshly redesigned. They're already throwing it on stock builds, which is pretty rad. And then that build is also coming with a DH carbon reserve wheel on the back, and then the standard HD30 on the front. So a little bit of added protection in the rear there, which makes total sense on a bruiser of a bike like this one.
The one thing that I noticed about this bike is that Santa Cruz is offering solid suspension across all builds, which is really nice to see. With that being said, I'd say that the GX Axis is sort of the differentiator. Once you hit that level, you then get the Performance Elite suspension, which gives you that little extra tunability, gives the rider that 4-way adjustability for rebound and for compression, which I know some riders like yourself really enjoy having that ability, but it's not for everyone. But if you want to get more into the weeds with your builds and your bikes, they offer that as well.
Yeah, I'm always relieved to see the Performance Elite suspension on, just because mechanically it's actually the same as the factory level stuff. The only difference is the Kashima coating, but I know all my settings basically off the top of my head, especially with the fork.
Another thing that stands out to me on these builds is the brakes. That 70 build is going to give you some DB8s, which are definitely an entry-level brake. They're going to stop you. They're still going to do what they need to do, but they're maybe not going to give you that extra power that some heavier riders or some more aggressive riders are necessarily looking for. That GX Axis sort of gets that good bump up to the Maven Bronze, and then the Exos come with Maven Silvers. I'd probably even still step up the brakes another step and go with those Maven Ultimates, just because I want the top of the line stopping power. It's an e-bike, it's 50 pounds.
So are you going for that XO build and upgrading the brakes, or which build?
Personally, I'm not a big carbon wheel guy. So for me, the extra money going towards carbon wheels, I'd rather put that towards the brakes. So I'd probably do something like get the GX Axis, upgrade the brakes, and still probably come in at less money than I'm spending on the XO.
Right on. Yeah, that call makes sense to me. I'm a little bit too curious about that new X2. I think I would pony up for the XO build. Get to try out that X2. As far as the things that I'd swap out, I definitely would reach for some Maven Ultimate brakes. It's the brake that I'm comfortable with, that I've been riding for the last season. So yeah, I'd probably upgrade the brakes, and then I'd upgrade the dropper post as well. Probably just fit the longest one I could fit in there. Ideally that new RockShox reverb with the 250 mil length. I would probably add an insert to the front and rear. Yeah, I've been known to flat tires and brake rims, so I'm definitely gonna always put inserts, especially in an e-bike where I'm not, getting the bike up the hill myself.
All right, so now that we've chatted through some of the numbers, why don't we hear about how the bike feels?
Yeah, so on the climbs, I think the bike was super comfortable. At 78.4 degree C-tube angle, it's definitely like a comfortable cockpit position, that's plenty steep. I got along with this Bosch motor really easily. I found, compared to other systems that I've used, it's very responsive to the gears, which is nice for me. I spend a lot more time on analog bikes than I do on e-bikes, and it just felt like an intuitive transfer over, you know what I mean? For example, when I was moving, from like a kind of less technical, flatter section of a climb into like a switchback, it was necessary to downshift a little bit, which is like what I'm used to. And so if you downshift a little bit, it kind of lets you like keep your momentum and power up that switchback that's a little bit steeper, you know, in the grade, and then just, you know, move back to your normal pace. As far as technical climbing goes, between the shorter cranks and then the new linkage, I feel like it kind of shines here, which you might not expect. It's 170 mil travel, which provides a ton of traction. The new 4-bar system, I think, does a good job on square edge hits, maybe a little bit better than a standard VPP bike. Getting that rear wheel up and over, which should be harder since it is a 27.5 wheel, the linkage does a good job of making that intuitive. And then, like, you know, motoring through technical climbs with those shorter cranks is a lot easier, right? You're not thinking about striking your pedals as much, and you can kind of just keep pedaling even when, you know, you shouldn't really have any business sneaking in pedal strokes over these technical rocks. So overall, super impressed with the climbing.
I noticed it has a very smooth power delivery. Maybe Santa Cruz has a little tuning sauce going on in there that's helping give a real smooth power delivery. I'd like to think of it as like almost like it's a more cadence-driven system where you have to maintain a normal cadence, almost like you would on a normal bike, where there are some systems out there where it doesn't really matter what your cadence is, you can kind of muscle the motor to push you. This bike, it feels like you're more on an analog bike, just like you're referring to, which to me resulted in the rider never really being caught by surprise by a surge of power coming through the bike and sending you off the trail when you weren't expecting it. Because there are a lot of different nuances in how e-bikes operate and how they feel, and a lot of that can be decided by how the power output's coming through that motor.
The Bosch system has 4 modes. I spent most of my time in that most powerful mode that allows you to get up and through the acceleration the most quickly. You can change the modes right on the cockpit, which is super nice, and then it also has a walk mode that the button for that is also right on the cockpit. I found it was a walk mode that's really easy to use for those hike-a-bike sections, whether you're just like running up to hit a jump or if you're, you know, in a super spicy section and you're pushing the bike up something hairy. It's really easy to just hold that button. It takes a second to kick in, but then you see the crank start spinning and you know you're getting assist for the walk mode there.
We know it's a great climber, but the bike was built to descend. It was built to go downhill fast. So I really want to hear what you have to say about that and how you felt like the new suspension platform performed in those situations.
Yeah, the Bullit is a very impressive descender. I mean, I think there are just a handful of things that kind of add up to make this bike like really stand out when it comes to technical descending especially. We started out with some jumps and berms and it was super fun to ride. Like I could tell right away that the cockpit was going to be agreeable for me. The geometry I think is in a nice sweet spot coming into flow trails. I'd say the one thing is like you do just kind of have to account for the weight. It almost changes your style a little bit, like the way that you're riding the jumps. You do kind of have to put some more body English into it, but I did find that it helped to have the bike in that aggressive race mode that gets you to accelerate the most quickly. There are times when you can tell like the heaviness of the bike requires you to like lift the bike more on like lips of jumps in particular. And when you know that's going to happen and you can sneak in a pedal and get some more acceleration going for yourself, you know, it helps clear the next feature. Moving into the bike's technical descending, I mean, it's hard to say like exactly what drives it, but I think they really nailed the execution of 4-bar. It feels really great underfoot. The mixed wheel platform I think helps a lot. Just the fact that the bike does have 170 millimeters of travel front and rear is always going to help with technical descending.
It is. Yep.
Yeah, and then the weight of the motor, you know, compared to an analog bike, just having that weight right by the bottom bracket in a place that's just going to generate traction and let the bike be more stable. All those things add up to a bike that's like very, very close to the feel of like an actual downhill bike. I was super impressed. I mean, you know, you don't have the dual crown fork up there, but aside from that, I mean, it's definitely the kind of bike where you can cock your heels and point it down pretty much whatever you want.
Yeah, and something that I observed just riding behind you, following you down some of the chunky stuff, was just how the bike was planted.
Yeah.
You weren't doing any bouncing. I didn't see the rear wheel doing anything crazy.
Like,
it was,
no skipping around.
Yeah, no stick. I would call it calm, which then means you're not feeling the feedback from the trail. You feel like you can ride faster because you're not getting rattled. You know, it's just a great feeling for the rider when the back of the bike is calm, when the front of the bike is calm, when it's just tracking the way that you want it to.
There are so many bikes that we get to test and review where it's like you just wanted to see that one thing changed, where it's like, oh, I wish it came in a mixed wheel option, or oh, I just feel like it needed a little bit more travel. And it's nice to see how they really like took their time to like bring all these different things into the package and just make it an excellent product.
It's also great to see a company that's not afraid to change something up. We all know that Santa Cruz is very well known for their VPP. It's something that I think they've championed in the past, that has been a very strong performer across all of their bikes. But even with that being said, they took a leap and they tried something new, they tried something different, and it's working.
Something else that we should touch on while we're talking descending is that this bike actually has a second flip chip. It's on the lower shock mount, and it essentially determines the shock's progressivity.
You know, you haven't ridden a ton of e-bikes, but you have a pretty good guess as to what the weight is behind this thing?
Well, the stated weight on all the builds is right around 49 pounds. The EXO Reserve build comes in a little bit lower, but yeah, they're all fluctuating around 49. I am guessing that that's referring to a size medium, but this bike, as it sits with pedals, I'm gonna assess that it's 52.5 pounds.
Okay, that's pretty fair. I'll probably give it a good old Price is Right and give you a 51.
All right, he's taking the under.
I'm gonna take the under.
We'll see who's right. Wow, so it actually came in pretty close to the stated weight, 50 pounds and 2 ounces. And for the Euros out there, that is 22.56 kgs. That's a wrap on the all-new Santa Cruz Bullit e-mountain bike. Thank you guys so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
And if you have any questions about the Bullit or any other e-bikes that we offer, please reach out to a Gearhead.
In the meantime, we'll see you out there. You.